Okay, so Peter is into like EMFs and grounding and shielding, and he's going to tell us like all about how all that stuff works. Um, yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. Take it from there, Peter, for a second. Like,
Thank you. Well, I mean, I used to work as an electrician, and I studied electronics in, I don't know what the school form is called because it's different in Sweden, but I mean, yeah, from 15 to 18 years. I mean, when I was from 15 to 18 years old, 3 years. And
high school? We call it high school, but like we don't have specializations in high school. It's just everything's.
yeah, so I mean, those three. I mean, I could have studied to become an electrician already there, but I chose electronics, but I just needed to do a little bit extra to work as an electrician. I mean, I was already into yeah, all this stuff with the yeah, New World Order. When I started getting ill from working as an electrician, so I had heard about wireless stuff and electrical stuff, that there were people existing that were called it's called EHS, or in English
hypersensitivity.
Electronic, yeah, electrosensitive hypersensitivity, and it's the exact same word in Swedish. And but I mean, I never thought about that. It never even crossed my mind that I could get ill from these things, because you don't feel it, you don't smell it, you can't touch it. I mean, the way life has evolved on this planet for billions of years, there has been nothing in that spectrum at all, basically. It's very, very low. Electromagnetic fields come from the Earth, and sometimes a little bit stronger from the sun, and you have a little bit from the stars, but it's trillions of times weaker than what we have created today. So there's no sense organ, no protection, nothing that the life has created to be able to shield itself or detect it or anything. But when it comes to light and heat, smell and all these things, we've had that. Even radiation. I mean, you have bacteria that live off radiation. We ourselves emit radiation. So a lot of the body's electrical system, and we mainly view ourselves as a chemical watery body walking around, or meat bag they want to make us believe. But we are actually energy beings first. When you start reading this science, I mean, it's not chemical. We're energy being. I mean, it's everything in the body works with different electromagnetic fields. You have different charges inside the cells that has to be maintained to make it work. The cell membrane acts like the brain of the cell, like a computer. So you can actually see the analogy from the computer world, how the body works actually. So so without us knowing it, we're actually trying to mimic life when we're building computers.
So like, what are some symptoms that you can get that if you know that, like?
Well, I mean, for me, it started with that I started getting headaches, or that I got hot in the ear, or that it felt like sensitive to sound. So it first started when we got the smartphones. I mean, with the 4G, we used it in work. I never had one myself, and I never felt anything before that. But I had like this Bluetooth piece as well, because it was so handy. I mean, I could just had a phone in my pocket, and I could press here and talk. So I started having that, and I started thinking like, well, it's just, yeah, I'm just tired or something, or I haven't drank enough. And I mean, eventually it started sinking in that I'm probably reacting to this, but even though I had heard about it and knew that people I still thought, well, it doesn't seem to get worse, and it's no problem, and it will be fine. So I mean, I kind of ignore it, and that's usually what the reason why people do get really ill from this. A lot of people have the misconception that somehow you have some kind of fear, or even the word electrohypersensitivity is actually wrong, because you are damaged in the same way as you get damaged by radioactivity. You
Right,
actually
like
see
overload.
the same kind of no damage. You damage the chromosome, you damage the cell, you create free radicals. I mean, in a way, actually, microwave and electromagnetic fields is worse than radiation, because radiation don't interfere with the body's communication. Especially with 5G, I mean, those works in the frequency range that our own cells communicate. I mean, you have, they communicate, I think it's somewhere between 38, 40 gigahertz up to 80 gigahertz. And then you have a lot of frequencies below that too in other systems in the body. So
and what's 5G's frequency? Do you know?
Well, the thing is that 5G isn't just, I mean, it's a system, but it contains very many different components. So what's being rolled out in Sweden, for example, it's like 3.5 gigahertz mainly. And then you have, but I mean, even 4G, I mean, has since 2015, all the cell phone towers in Sweden that are 4G have become 5G ready. So the 4G system is also being incorporated to the 5G system. And I've heard that they have switched antennas, so I don't really know how that affects. So, and on the countryside, 5G is supposed to be 700 megahertz, because then you can have a very, very long range. So it actually has a lower frequency than the ones we are used to today. So you have very many different, and you have the higher ones too, like 26 gigahertz to 28, and then you have 60 gigahertz, stuff like that.
So is that the main difference between 4G and 5G, the frequencies?
No. Well, I mean, the main thing, one of the biggest thing is, I mean, if I'm allowed to be bold, is that now they're actually admitting that it's a military system. It's a weapon system. I mean, in Sweden,
5G or 4G?
5G. I mean, actually, all of them has been. I mean, you just need to listen to Barry Trower or Mark Steele. Both of them have worked with weapon system in the military. And Barry Trower is a microwave expert, and I mean, both of them. It's, yeah. If you don't want to have nightmares, you shouldn't listen to that too much.
Yeah, I've listened to Mark Steele before. Only like one or two, but yeah.
But so then, if it's used as a military system, is that just because they can change the frequencies at will in order to control people, or what? Like, what does that mean?
I mean,
exactly?
I would say that it's many different things. I mean, one thing is you have the control. I mean, that you can surveil people, and I mean, that is. I mean, most of the time it's done. I mean, if you look at in the U.S. where they have contracted a lot of the military stuff and what do you call it?
The NSA, the National Security.
Yeah. I mean, they usually put a lot of things out on contract to companies. So I mean, basically that's what has been done. I mean, in the open with Google and Facebook and all these things. I mean, that's what. Snowden talked about when it was.
Oh yeah, Edward Snowden. Yeah.
A while ago. Yeah. That it really astounded him how this is being done in the open. You don't focus on what's actually. I mean, it's a you even pay. I mean, it's even open. You pay for it.
Right.
Well, that's like I got into some of the.
I mean, it's a radar system.
Oh, sorry. Like there was like a lag in the internet, but yeah, no, I got into some of how like basically like Facebook is like presumably could be started by our own government in order to spy amongst people who willingly give their information.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Google. I mean, just Corbett Report. he made a really, really good documentary. I think it's called The Secret Inside Silicon Valley or something like that. It's really, really good. He doesn't just show how the CIA and NSA came along after Google and Facebook had launched. He actually shows how, I mean, how you basically seem to switch from a secret program to basically seeing to it that it got started up. So they probably just handed over, I mean, or what do you call it, kind of nudged young students in that direction, and then like, so it really seems like it was that from the beginning. Yeah, all the way from the beginning, and I mean, that has happened to many things. But with the 5G as weapon, I mean, it's, or I mean, 4G and stuff, I mean, it has to, I mean, you can use it as a radar system. I mean, you can, so you can see the terrain or where people are, and I mean, everyone has a smartphone, so everyone is surveilling themselves all the time. And a lot of things.
You carry your little beaker with you. I said you carry your little beaker with you.
Yeah, yeah. And that they can use that as a targeting tool as well, especially with 5G, because that's the more, I mean, weapon-like parts of 5G is that you have focused beams. I'm not sure if the lowest on just 700 megahertz can do that as much, because the further up you go in frequency, the narrower the beam can become. So even though, I mean, it might not sound much to have a beam of a couple of milliwatts, but that's extreme. If you have that at a laser, you're gonna burn your eyes out. You're gonna get blind. And just think about, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So everyone is going to carry around, even though they start at 3.5G, the chips in the phones, as far as I've been able to read, they're already, I mean, can work with 26 to 28 gigahertz. I haven't read anything about 60 there, but I know that does exist in China. And I mean, for example, the 2.4 gigahertz that Wi-Fi and the cordless home phones DECT uses, I mean, that was chosen because it resonates with water. It destroys the structure of water, because waters in our body are, I mean, it's what they call the fourth state of matter. The water is structured inside the body in a crystalline state, like a kind of gel, but I would say that's a little bit too strong word. So it interferes with that, and with 60 gigahertz, it interferes much. And it's not that both 2.4 and 60 gigahertz are free frequencies. You don't need to license them at all. And it seems to be that in most of the countries around the world. So that means that they can put up with anywhere they want, and you have no idea, because they don't need to tell anyone about it.
Right.
So we could already have 60 gigahertz that they're putting up, even though no one is using it. You have no idea.
Well, I do know that on the iPhone 10s, I think it was my mom's phone, she said that she saw 5G come up as instead of 4G come up, it was already registering as 5G. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, that's probably what they call 4G already, because they still seem to use the same frequencies as 4G, but I'm not sure exactly. I haven't been able to understand in detail what they really mean by 5G already. I think it's just that it will work with the 5G system, because it's supposed to be like an umbrella of all these things.
Right.
I mean, self-driving cars and everything in between. And I mean, one of the biggest applications that I actually have admitted in newspaper is that 5G is needed, I mean, by the military, because these new armament race between Russia, China, and US, and maybe some other countries are involved a little bit when you have these hypersonic missile systems, other laser systems that are very, very differently than the old ballistic atomic weapons and stuff, where you just shoot shoot something and it goes in a straight arrow. Suddenly you have something that goes very, very fast, and it can dodge and go left and right, and it does that in microseconds.
Right,
so then
they
you have
need to communicate with it en route. But the problem is, like, I thought 5G was very short range. Like, you had, like, you have to build a lot of towers.
Well, it really depends on what frequency you're using. The higher up you go in frequency, the shorter the range.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, for example, 700 megahertz, I can't say that that's going to be the exact same frequency in every country, but broadly, and every time they have upgraded to a new generation, they've seen to it that it's the same standard around the world. So it probably is. So 700 megahertz, it's going to have a longer range than GSM phones. And so it's going to be harder to shield against it, for example. But the higher up in range you go, the more towers, the closer it has to be. But also it's easier to shield against it. Like 60 gigahertz, the reason, I mean, the same thing that makes it dangerous to air also makes it very easy shieldable, because the air in itself is blocking radiation, so they can focus the beam even more narrow. That's why they need so much power for it, because then they can, from a technical point of view, they get a very pure signal. But it also means that it's very directional and very dangerous, because you're going to have it very close and it's going to be very strong. I've seen clips from the US about it. It doesn't sound so nice.
Well, like, now that we're scared shitless, but like, and we can't do anything about it. They're rolling it out whether we like it or not, right? So, like, what are your methods to protect against it? Because you've got some.
My question. We need.
Yeah, no, he's got like Faraday cage and like grounding stuff. Like he knows his stuff. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, 60 gigahertz. I mean, I'm not 100% sure if a windshield will stop it, but I mean, just a wall or just a piece of paper. I mean, that's why they're cutting down the trees in so many countries in the cities. They say they do it because, or half of the time they say they do it because the trees are old or rotten or something. Other times they say it's supposed to be for the landscape. And I mean, a lot of the operators are putting up the cell phone towers. They already have agreements that they're allowed to take down trees and things in the path of the signal, because even a leaf will stop it. I mean, even when it comes to the lower frequencies that are used today with 4G, if you have a tree or a couple of bushes or a small forest between yourself and a tower, the strength is going to be lower in the summer when the trees have leaves, and it's going to be higher in the winter when it's no leaves. And it probably has to do a lot with that there's water in the leaves. So the higher up they go, the more dangerous it is, the easier it's going to be to shield. So, for example, the 5G satellites, because they're up in range, even though they're a lot closer than most of the other satellites, a roof will shield against it. So when it comes, but what we have to do to protect against, I mean, the easiest way to protect is actually turn things off. That's the easiest thing to ever do it. So, and the thing closest to people are going to be the most dangerous. So their own phone, their Wi-Fi, especially the new Wi-Fi that's called Wi-Fi 6. I mean, that's actually a part of the 5G ecosystem.
Wi-Fi, I haven't heard of Wi-Fi 6. Is that like a...
Yeah, you even have routers that already are sending at 60 gigahertz that you can buy, or 26 gigahertz. But most of them seems to be at 6 gigahertz. So they already had beaming technology in them. And the thing with, I mean, all this wireless stuff is that most people, including myself, you didn't seem, or you don't seem that it's affect you. And especially when people are into meditation and everything, of course, I mean, a lot of these things, spiritual work and energies, and if you have protective angels or whatever, it's going to help you, but it's like a slow cancer. It might take 10 years to start you're ill, but most people that have become really sick from this, when the weakest link in the body is breaking, it goes really, really fast. I talked to this Norwegian girl that's just 5 years ago worked in Oslo. I don't remember what she worked with, but basically overnight, she had to move out into the middle of nowhere. I couldn't handle anything. So the hardest part is that most people don't understand the symptoms and when you're being affected, and that you don't take them seriously. I didn't take it seriously at all. So I would have been a lot better if I would have understood, but I didn't do that until it was way too late. And when you start getting ill, then it becomes like a slippery slope. It's getting harder and harder because somehow you have to try and maintain your normal life, but you can handle less and less. But you need to be handled more and more because more and more things don't work in your life. So it really goes downhill. It can go very fast.
So you were already into this, obviously, because of your background, but then you started getting headaches. What other symptoms did you have, or what was the point where you just realized and started making the connection and believing it?
Well, I mean, I had actually heard about it because I started being into everything, digging into everything that's happening around us. I kind of knew about it and I kind of realized early on, but I was in denial. Mm. But the symptoms that I got that are most common, I mean, it affected my mental health. And I mean, that you start getting memory problems. And I mean, nowadays, basically everyone joke about they have Alzheimer's light because they can't remember anything. And I mean, sleep problems, I mean, that you don't dream anymore because people can't get that rest, and psychological problems, I mean, and allergies, those are the most common things, that the stomach starts working, but when you get more acute symptoms from the exposure, headaches, there are problems and signs that it's like you have to cough, or that you have an influenza all the time, and you start having problem with your heart and yeah, joints and stuff like that. I mean, it's a little bit individually, but you have a fairly similar list. So it affects a lot of things with the nervous system and the brain. That's usually how it starts. But then you don't understand it because everyone has problems with their mind today. So people don't see that that's a sign.
Right, and say
everyone is eating
melatonin.
Happy pills and sleep pills.
Right.
Huh?
I said, yeah, and all you'll get is somebody to tell you, like, oh, go take a melatonin, or, you know, like, people just dismiss these symptoms.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about, like, so what did you try first? Did you try like a grounding mat, or what was the first sort of thing you tried?
I mean, I actually did that quite early on, and it did really help. It felt like, if I would make an analogy, it felt like, I mean, when I came home from work and going to bed, I mean, I had headaches, and it felt like you had squeezing on the head, like that, or like
pressure.
My eyes could hurt. Yeah, pressure in the sinuses, and I could feel tired. And I mean, this hyperactiveness is also a very, very common sign, because the body gets way too much energy and it's getting stressed by all this, so it's trying to get rid of it. Mm. And when you start building up toxins because of all these damages that's done in the body, because when the body is put into stress mode, even if you don't feel it, then it stopped taking out the garbage and it stopped taking in the nutrition. So everything is starting to pile up. And the body knows that it needs to move to get rid of this shit, start working again. So everyone, I mean, that most people have a problem, have like this ADHD, they can't sit still, you can't focus more than 5 seconds. I mean, you see that in most people, and that is a very, very common symptom.
I have that symptom sometimes, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how much, you know, as a flight attendant, you probably get exposed to radiation and different type of electroactivity.
Well, and I'm just extremely ungrounded, like literally, because I'm in the air all the time. Yeah. But so okay, so you have these mats that are basically like plugged into the grounding wire in your electrical socket, and then it's got
Well, yeah, no, I wouldn't. I mean, in Sweden we can't use this electrical socket, and even though you can use that in most countries, I wouldn't advise. It's better to attach it to the ground outside.
so you have like a wire attached to the earth outside that goes into like a wired system mat that you sleep on. Like
Yeah, yeah, I can show you.
It's the earthing mat.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't advise in buying the official ones because most of them, first, they are more expensive than buying a fabric that it's made for shield. I mean, more convenient if you don't know how to do. And you shouldn't buy silver. You should buy that they contain stainless steel, because if it contains silver, the silver will start oxidize. So after a year or two, the mat doesn't work anymore. So stainless steel is the way to go. And I mean, they're quite expensive, but and I mean, I made my own sleeping bag out of shielding fabric because it contains 30% metal on the outside.
Doesn't look like metal to me. That's awesome. Like
yeah, it's both shielding and the grounding. So I basically just took like a big cord like this, and a pin for a tent.
Okay, yeah.
Like this. And then just attach it to the bed with like this crocodile.
Oh yeah. Like that's all metal.
So that's how easy you can do it yourself, or just sit outside, but it's not so nice in the winter.
True.
I mean, what basically happened to me when I started doing that was everything disappeared right away like this. And I felt so good that I became awake. Like the euphoria of feeling so good made it hard to sleep. I mean, just when I started grounding myself.
Wow.
And then I didn't do that for a couple of years because I did something wrong, something I shouldn't do. I ground the computer as well with the same cord. So of course I got all the shit from the computer when I was grounding myself. So then I started feeling bad and I thought there was something wrong and I stopped doing it. But after I had to move and everything couldn't work anymore and was really, really sick for several years, I started grounding again. And from just 3 days of grounding every night, I went from every night sweating like a pig. Basically everything I ate, I got allergy symptoms and rashes and bloating and all kinds of shit, and I felt like I couldn't, sorry the language, and felt like I couldn't handle any electro stuff at all. I couldn't even, I didn't even listen to a radio. I barely used the phone. So over just 3 nights, I started sleeping like a baby. I got a lot of symptoms because the sicker you are, because when this body starts healing, you're gonna get a lot of healing symptoms, and those can be as bad or even worse as what you get from the sickness. But for me, why I knew that it worked was because it felt good. I felt calm. It felt like I'd taken Valium or something. It felt so good, and I felt so in touch with myself. And I've heard that from especially women more than men, that they feel like they're connected to Mother Earth again.
So when does the Faraday cage come in? Like, so you have to ground and shield. Like what? How does the combo work?
I mean, if you're not sick and you don't have so much wireless stuff, you don't need a Faraday cage. But if you don't know what you have around you, you have to have a meter to know that, unless you already know it's really bad. So but I got a Faraday cage in Gothenburg, and it made a huge difference. And I got a better one here. There's cheap ones that contain silver wires that are exposed so it looks silverish. No one should buy those because it will happen the same thing as so you pay like $700, and then they're broke after 2 years or something. So it's not so fun.
So silver oxidizes, don't use silver.
Yeah, you can have silver inside the fabric, but it has to be protected like with a coating or something.
Okay.
Then it will last as long as the fabric. So it really makes a huge difference. The canopy that I have today, it looks like some kind of like a, you know, they have around dream beds or something, like a Cinderella bed, or I don't know. It's not pink.
Like a mosquito net, like a mosquito.
Yeah, like but like a fairy tale, like
You have, and you have a mat underneath the bed, and you have all the sides around. So basically, it would be this equivalence of moving all the wireless stuff maybe a couple of kilometers, or dampening the signal like 100 times or something. So it's a huge difference. I mean, that saved my life. Otherwise, I couldn't have been living here. Maybe today, but not then.
But it's
expensive as hell.
It's expensive to do it, I would imagine. I had a neighbor come over. He was into Faraday cages. In fact, he had his whole house done, built here. I live in Mexico. Made within the walls, well, I guess netting. And he had given me a small net because I was concerned about the router, because it was on the opposite side of my son's bedroom, and he was just a baby. So I would shut it off at night, but anyway, I wanted additional protection when I needed to work. So he gave me this screening to put on the other side of the router so it wouldn't go through. But he came in with the meter, and he was metering the house, and he said actually the worst I guess electromagnetic, I don't know,
electromagnetic frequency.
I guess the frequencies, was coming from the light bulbs. Which I was surprised about. I mean, I absolutely hate fluorescent light bulbs, or those mercury ones. That's impossible to find incandescent light bulbs nowadays. But anyway, that was something that was interesting.
Wait, was this coming from LED light bulbs, or was this coming from incandescent light bulbs?
It was from from LED, which I almost didn't have at the time, but now it's almost impossible to find incandescent. It's very hard.
But I thought you said it was fluorescent. I mean, compact light tubes.
Yeah, I don't know. It was I don't know. It was one in the kitchen. It was like
Okay, that's fluorescent then. Those
it
big
was probably tubes? Fluorescent. It wasn't a tube. No, it was.
Well, you have the small ones that work in normal.
It was those weird spirally ones.
Yeah,
that I hate.
Those are made. When you have the long ones, they don't produce a radio frequency field, but the short compact versions that you screw into a normal socket, they actually produce a radio frequency field on purpose to make it work. But I wouldn't agree with him that it's worse than Wi-Fi, because it's not always about the strength. It's a lot more about the information or the signal, how it is. So you can have a strong signal that is a lot nicer to the body than a weak signal. So the more information, the faster something goes. Like if you're using data traffic, it's a lot worse than if you make a phone call, for example.
Well, that was interesting, because he suggested that I change the light bulbs, and then, well, with the router, those were it. But that was based on the information that he got on the meter. But I see what you're saying.
Do you still have that screen?
I do. I have the screen, but I'm not using it at the moment. But anyway, I could use it for my cell phone. He suggested also just turning off your phone when you have it on you, so it's not next to your body, and also putting it into that netting, so that.
God, man, I am so bad about my phone. My phone's on me all the time. I don't sleep with it in the same room as me anymore, but like, unless I am using it as an alarm clock, and then like I'll turn on airplane mode and then have it by me or whatever. But just like during the day, it's like in my pocket and stuff. That's not good.
No.
Yeah, iPhones are actually, Apple products is actually the worst. Oh.
Yeah, I have an iPhone XS, so there you go. It's like.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that just with the phone, I mean, if you start thinking I mean, this is better than that, or this is worse than that, it can be a lot easier than trying to do everything at once. But I mean, for example, with Wi-Fi, the best thing is just turning it off and having a cable to the computer. I mean, do one really need to have that comfort of missing that cable and be able to sit in the bathtub or something? Is that worth it?
But I don't even know if the cable's available everywhere anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, you just buy in Ethernet cable and plug it into the Wi-Fi. You usually have a Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Oh, okay, I see.
You
Yeah,
could
the
turn
router.
off the Wi-Fi router, yeah, and then just
Yeah,
do it
and if the
directly.
router, as I understood in the US, a lot of times it's a mobile broadband, like 4G, right?
Yeah, I think that's what mine is.
Yeah, and so the best thing is to put it in a window that is towards the closest cell phone tower that has the best reception. And then you make like a shoebox or something out of tin foil, and you make like 2-3 layers and put it inside so the opening is against the window.
Okay, so it's shielded it from everything else coming into the house, and then
Yeah, so then the 4G signal would go out towards the cell phone tower. And even better, if one would be sensitive, then you would hang a shielding fabric, like a transparent one, that is, I mean, that goes from the top of the window to the floor and maybe 1 meter in each direction from the router, because microwaves have a seat to go up, so you always extra. And with the phone, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, when you don't need it, so you just turn it on when you have to need it. Then the phone will radiate less. And if you turn off data traffic, I mean, if you need someone to call you, but you don't need to surf online, you should turn off data traffic as well, because then it will be more like a normal phone. It will only send a signal maybe a couple of times in an hour to see if the cell phone tower is still there. It won't do anything. So it's when you turn on the data traffic, that's when all the apps is starting to communicating all the time, even though you're not using it.
Correct. Yeah, it's just sending out like ding ding, a little ding ding.
yeah, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
mine probably doing that right now. Yeah.
And if you want me to make it a little bit worse, I mean, the phones in themselves, when you have them against the body, I mean, that's a computer. You have tons of different frequencies, everything from very low up until the gigahertz frequency. I mean, from the near fields, the electrical and magnetic fields, and they affect the body as well. So one shouldn't actually have the phone on them at all. If you should have it, you should have it like preferably on your foot, wrist, or something like that, because you don't want to have it close to your heart, you don't want to have it against your head, and you certainly don't want to have it against your future kids.
True.
Because, I mean, that's one of the few things that WHO has admitted, that it causes sterility and cancer. Those are the two things that they have admitted that microwaves do.
Man, and like anytime I go off my phone for like, you know, I go on some journey for a month or something and I don't have my phone with me, or I have it turned off in airplane mode and I just use it as a camera basically, like I feel so awesome. Like I always just feel so much better. And then when I come back to reality and I get into the addicted mode, it's just, yeah.
That's a combination of factors there, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they do make it that way on purpose. The brightest mind in psychology and behavior science, things like that, and marketing, they work at Google and Facebook and phone manufacturer. They do this thing on purpose to make you addicted. They have calculated, I mean, they've calculated that this and this many microseconds is needed, so you should delay the response so you get more addictive, or that it will delay a like on Facebook, so you might start getting a little bit anxious if someone liked your picture, and then suddenly after half a day you get a like, and then you get even more happy, so it's easier to get addicted. So they have calculated all these things. And then you have the frequency itself from the phone. I mean, both the near fields and the microwaves that can get you addicted as well, or affect one's behavior. I mean, you have tons of patents from this, and you had this guy, an engineer, a scientist working on this, that didn't want to work with this kind. I mean, you have patents that show how a television or a monitor or electrical stuff we have near us, how they can create a feedback loop, so they can change our mind, how we think, what we think, our emotions, everything. So he was so fed up with this that he quit. He made a web page that aren't available anymore, but I found it through the Wayback Machine after listening to a podcast with him.
What was his name?
I don't remember, but I can look. So he made where he put all the patterns that he could find that is horrific, how they can affect us. And then he also had created a small program that you can install on a Windows computer, where you actually could create invisible, frequency changes, that a screen emits, that it's a change, because when something changes visually on the screen, it also changes the fields around it. So he created this to show how one's emotion and state of mind can get affected with just a program. So we have no idea what they embed in stuff or how they do it. It's like a black box of mystery, but they do stuff, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think they do.
So in addition to sleeping with a Faraday cage or your blanket that you have and earthing, is there anything else is earthing enough to go out and to be out in nature? I live by the ocean now. One of the reasons why I wanted to move here was to get away from electromagnetic overstimulation. But
if you're healthy, if you don't have any other problems, that probably would be enough, I would think. So take away as much exposure as you can at home. Don't have anything wireless unless you absolutely have to need it. And but when people start getting symptoms, usually affects the stomach a lot, because it's not a coincidence that allergy has gone from maybe one kid in the entire class to basically everyone has an allergy besides maybe one kid in the class. Yeah, and that's because it causes, both the stress in itself causes the stomach and intestines to work worse, but it also punches holes in the membrane in the intestinal lining that's supposed to protect from any entry the body that the body don't want to. So of course, when stuff enters that shouldn't be here, you start getting allergic reactions. So when one starts having health problems with EMS, for example, the one thing that has worked the best for people to regain health is to fix their intestines, their stomach. You usually have to take away gluten and wheat, corn, or maybe not corn, but all GMOs, everything that is known to be allergen. And most of the time one notices a little bit what one can't handle, but sometimes you have to get rid of things and then after a while see if it affects you, because when you eat something you can't handle, the body can suppress the response, so you seem to be fine, but everything that goes with milk could be like that. But just that people know about it and start researching it for themselves. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, that's a good start. So that has helped me tons. Stop eating stuff that isn't good for me or that I react to, and then a lot of the symptom went away. So besides grounding and sleeping in a canopy, that has made tons of difference as well. And also the state of mind, because I was in a lot of fear in the beginning. And in the beginning when I couldn't sleep for a year or so at night, I got really stressed from it. Like, I have to sleep, otherwise I won't regain health, I have to regain health. It's like, so, that makes it so you actually have to, so those things, so it's, these health crises of mine has actually been a good thing in the end, because I've had to start listening to my body. I had started taking care of what I think about, what I put my energy into, what emotions I want to have in my life. I start meditating, getting a different view on what's important. Just getting rid of the phone, even if I wouldn't have been sensitive to it, or gone ill from it. Just that by itself, having no phone, is one of the best things I ever done. because I had a smartphone and I got super addicted as well, really, really quickly. I sat every night like this. I sat at work like that, tried to sneak out, I mean, a couple of minutes here and there from work. I was super addicted to it, even though towards the end when I got bad symptoms, I still kept using it until one morning I couldn't touch it because it hurt so bad in my hand and arm. It was over a night like this, and then I knew that I had to take it away.
I have that feeling. When I can feel it when I hold it. When I hold my phone, I can feel it go up my arm and down the left side of my body.
Yeah,
Wow.
then that's a really strong sign from your body that you shouldn't have a phone anymore, or at least not a smartphone.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because like I have a cousin that she got a smartphone this year, but she resisted up until right now, and I was always kind of going like, yeah, stick it to him, go Tiffany. And then another one of our friends who's been on this podcast, he got rid of his phone like in March, and he's just been like emailing or this Zooming if he has to or whatever, talk to his family or whatever. He's like, but you end up realizing how little you need it. Yeah,
because I mean that's one thing too. I was super afraid of getting rid of my phone once I got addicted to it, because not just that, also that I got super afraid of how is anybody supposed to contact me? How is it supposed to? I have to have one. But once I didn't have one anymore, I didn't see one single drawback. I mean, I always have an old spare phone that I can just put a battery into and make a call if an emergency happens. So it's not that I can't. I mean, I'm not stupid. It's a good lifesaver if something happens. But
right.
I mean, when I couldn't use the GPS anymore that I've been using for several years and work, I had to start using a map. And I learned the city like never before.
Yeah. Well, it's like that same thing where...
And I got regained because notes.
What? I was gonna say, it's that same thing. Like when I was little, like I would be like, I would know all my friends' phone numbers. I would know my phone number. I would know my mom's phone number. Know everybody's phone number. And then now it's like, I know my phone number to give.
Yeah,
to
if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes you ask people and they don't even know their own phone number. They're like, let me just text you.
Right.
You're like, what? No, I mean, like, I need your number. Yeah. Anyway, we like when you're not forced to use your memory won't make space for it.
Yeah. And I mean, when you read stuff, I mean, that's to do with technology, because I read stuff on the screen, or if I would have had a phone, I can't retain it, I can't understand and get into the information as good as if I have it on paper in a book. Like if I print out the same stuff, it's way easier to remember, understand, and take in. So there's something happening with that part too, that it's electronics or a screen. I have a couple of ideas about it. But,
well, for me, I know, like, I don't know if everybody's that kind of learner, but like my memory will retain something really well if I write it down on paper. Like if I physically write down.
Tactile memory, yeah.
So I think for me as well, like if I feel the paper and I turn the page and I do that, it does seem to stick with me longer than an article I read on my little phone, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the things that we feel is, oh, it's so good, you can just look it up online. And I mean, now there's almost no stores that still has these catalogs, but there's one in Sweden that still has one. They sell a lot of car parts and stuff. And when I try looking stuff up online on them, I never find anything. And I can search the right word, and you can write like car tire, and you get a bathing duck. It's like, what's wrong with internet? But I mean, when I have in a catalog, it's super easy. It's so easy. You find stuff right away, and you know where it is in the catalog. Or when you have a book, you can just flip back and forth. You can't do it in a PDF. Can't even come close to it. It's such a difference.
You were just born in the wrong time.
I mean, nowadays, no, I'm born in the right time.
That's true.
This is the time where people need to relearn this. And I mean, when I talk to people like that, they like, yeah, you're right, and they start thinking about it. And I notice that people do, I mean, there are people starting to realize that a little bit, so. But I mean, when I'm in the city or in the village, when people have a phone, and it's such a relief not having one. It's like, like this, and and it's so nice because you don't have this device that poking at your attention. And when I go outside, I mean, I might take my home keys with me at most. I don't have anything else. Or yeah, maybe my mechanical watch, but. And it's so nice. It's so nice. You feel so free, untethered.
Yep. I stopped taking my phone. Well, I don't, now that I just moved to the coast, so I've been going to the beach every day, and I don't want to worry about my phone getting stolen, really, when I'm in the water. So I've just been leaving it at home, and I've thought, the only thing I miss it for really is to take pictures, but even that, it's just nice not to have it and just not to think about it and say, oh, for this few hours, that's true, an old camera. I do have one. I do have a few, yeah. Yeah, exactly. There are other means where there are cameras.
Yeah, and it's way better quality as well. It's more fun to take a photo.
Yeah. I'll definitely have to substitute that, because actually I think that's my main thing I use the phone for. My main utilitarian thing that I couldn't live without is the video camera and the phone. Like, I do take a lot of pictures and a lot of video. Like, I don't know, but yeah.
You remember your vacation then? It's like, oh, I don't remember what I was doing, but I have tons of photos.
I remember having tons of photos of it. I don't know. I love having the. Like, it jogs your memory when I look back at the photos. I don't know. But yeah, like sometimes I do take a lot of photos and then I go like, I'm never going to look at these again. Like, I don't know why I did that, but like, whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, no, this is like really good food for thought. And it's just one of those things where I recently changed phone plans. And so now like I'm on like this Google Fi or whatever. And I'm starting to think like, yeah, like I would think it would be, I used to be so much more productive in my early 20s when I didn't have a smartphone. Like, I got a smartphone probably like in 2012, I guess. So I've had it for the last 8 years, but before my smartphone, I could work circles around me now. Like, in terms of like my creativity and the amount of stuff I would produce. And, you know, I was like writing scripts, and I had my own business, and I was doing all kinds of stuff. And then once I got a smartphone, it was like my spare time would be like crushing candies or something. I mean, I have to punish myself all the time by erasing my games, but but it's definitely like there's an internal struggle with the addictiveness to it.
Yeah.
So there's that in addition to the fact that like it does have all these EMFs that we don't even really know what it's doing to our body, really. And we haven't studied it long enough. That's the other thing that's interesting.
Well, we have over 10,000 studies, so it's well researched. I mean, you even had a military study that was declassified from 1972 from the Marine, the Navy, and I think you had one from DOD as well, where they basically, I mean, acknowledged all the symptoms that we know about that one gets, and one paper that I don't remember where it came from that was also declassified said at the end that we have to put a lid on this, basically. I mean, I don't remember the exact words, but what they basically meant was they had to put a lid on this because otherwise it will affect the industry and the military very negatively. We can't stop that progress. So they knew about it way before we got it into our lives. And
well,
I mean, the first people.
iPhone also did the same thing, where they know that cell phones are bad for people. And I think there's a lawsuit right now, or at least an investigation about it, about how much I think it was iPhone and Apple knew about the negative effects of cell phones.
Yeah.
And how they
and
just lied about it.
I mean, the cell phone, the mobile phone industry knows about this. I mean, in the manuals, if it's online or if it's in print, they specifically have, what do you call it? They basically have
disclaimer?
Yeah, a disclaimer. So they can't be held from it. Basically, it says like you have to have the phone 15 centimeters from you to be in the safety limit. So when you did have a court case when a guy said, I get cancer for this, and then the lawyer, I mean the attorney asked him, what hand did you use? And he said, left or right. Well, then the attorney said, well, then you didn't keep the 15 centimeter distance. And there's no insurance company that is going to insure you against damage from this. The two top insurance companies, one is called Swish, I think, and the other one, it's in London. I don't remember what it was called.
Lloyd's.
Yeah, Lloyd's. They haven't done that first. And you have Swish have PF, where they talked about the big areas that are high risk that they won't forgot the word, that you can't insure against. And you had EMF, you had the GMO, nanoparticles, you had
acts of God or something
No, but it was what they were forecasting that was going to be a high risk in the future.
Oh.
Or now and in the future. And they had, civil unrest. So that speaks a lot that you have EMF, GMO, and those kind of things at top.
Huh. Yeah, this is crazy sobering.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not completely powerless. Are there any, do you know of any, I don't know if there's lawsuits, or is there any way that this is going to stop, that 5G is going to stop? Because there are some towns coming out and saying that they don't want it, schools, of course, in some places. But
yeah,
it's
the easiest thing is, I don't know. It's quite hard to say anything with the judicial part, legal stuff, because it varies so much from country to country, and they have made it very waterproof in many countries. But at the end of the day, the politicians, when they do get enough pressure, they have to do something. And you always have civil disobedience or non-compliance. It's even better, because say that they want to put up a phone mast. Well, if people put their trucks there and stand there and they lie in the road and whatever, or there's tons of stuff to do. But the hard part is that most people don't get it. So the sad part is that I think that many more people have to get sick. The really sad part is that a lot of the symptoms that people get from 5G, we are being told that is because of this so-called influenza now going on around the world. And it's very, very sad that it is that way, because all the hotspots, or that they tell us are the hotspots, are where they put up 5G, basically. You have some divergence here and there, but it's a very, very clear picture. And you even had a scientific report coming out where they could show that when you have wavelengths that are smaller than the length of the cell, you get these toxic particles that are going to be detected as signs of having the virus. Because, I mean, virus tests, they don't test for the virus, they test for trace particles that one see as proof of the virus, but those kind of particles can happen because of a lot of different reasons.
Hmm.
And I mean, when you go to the hospital and just when you say that, oh, my heart hurts, or I can't breathe, or it pressure on my chest or stuff like that, or I have a cough, or it feels like the influenza or the sinus are swelled up, then they're going to think, well, they have the COVID or something, or influenza. They're not going to think, oh, it's because of microwaves.
Yeah, I mean, does anybody, is there any medical, like traditional medical profession that actually acknowledges?
Yeah, there is. I mean, you have doctors around the world. I mean, I have one that is helping me. I mean, you have the Austrian Medical Association, or no, it's an Austrian organization with doctors that do acknowledge this, and they have a very comprehensive paper on both how different symptoms that it can tick in a form, I mean, like a paper,
Mm-hmm.
and also, also that they're protesting against this buildup, and the exposure limit is way too high. For example, in Sweden, it's 1 million times higher than the rest of the EU. And it's even more higher than, for example, Austria and Switzerland.
Like what they're allowed to do? You mean like
in Sweden,
okay.
You're allowed to beam out 10 watts. That's the exposure limit, and that's a lot. I mean, just think about how... I mean, yeah, if you had a 10 watts laser, you would be burning through threes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, what would be a low amount that they would allow other countries to have? What's probably one of the most strict countries on this?
I think actually it's Austria that's the most strictest, but in general, countries from former Soviet Republic are stricter in general, because in Soviet they knew, I mean, they understood and knew about the risk very early on, and they have done a lot of research when it comes to microwave and energy technology. So they are way ahead in the game. They tried to warn the US about it, but they didn't listen. So they thought it was like yeah.
What about microwaves in general, like food microwaves to heat your food?
Well, it's very bad. First, the microwaves in themselves radiate a lot of microwaves out into the open. But it not just destroy food at all, because you create a lot of free.
Sorry, the connection's kind of crappy right now.
So the body can't use it. So it's better not to use a microwave at all.
Right.
Do you know what the Navy, people in the Navy, when they wanted to go to land and take a hooker or something, or the girlfriend or whatever, they stood in front of the radar beam, because then they get sterile. So they couldn't have kids for a couple of weeks.
Creative.
Wow. There you go. It's amazing there's humans at all sometimes, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But you said that, I would like to, I mean, I got the impression that Danielle knew some about canopies or Faraday cages or stuff.
Well, me and Danielle have both like expressed interest in building our own before, and we've kind of talked about it, and we've researched it a little bit, and we've kind of been like, oh man, that's like $1,000. It's like it's kind of either of us have like overt symptoms of this, so you know, it's more just kind of like our intuition tells us that we need to, that there's something going on in this field. Like for me, I know that like we are electric beings, and I've experienced that in like energy healing stuff, and then also with like I have this thing called a street light interfere. That's what I've looked up, where like I if I'm in a certain mood, or certainly pissed off, I can turn off street lights, or scared or something, I can turn off street lights. And then I've also turned off the airplane twice from like just really negative emotions. So I know that there's some sort of emotional connection with our electricity in our body. So I thought like, well, if I've experienced that, then I know that other things can affect it. So I definitely know we are completely ignoring the electricity in our bodies.
Yeah, I think that's true. We're ignoring a lot of it. I don't know if you're familiar with Edgar Casey, but he was a seer prophet,
Psychic dude.
Who's channeled all different entities. But anyway, out of these channelings, he made this battery pack that I always found fascinating, and it had to do with the well, I guess just recharging your heart, but it was for helping all different types of ailments. So there was that, and then the Faraday cage, of course, that always interested me. I figured if I lived in cities and there was nothing I could really do about it, the best way I could do it, at least, was within my house. And I work from the computer, so I spend a lot of time in front of the computer daily. So yeah, just trying to find basic ways to help myself.
Yeah, I mean, there are, very easy and cheap ways to do a lot of betterments in one's home. I would say one of the first things one need to do is buy a meter, because otherwise it's going to be very hard to know what you're trying to change.
Right, you have to know what your base is.
Yeah, you have to know your base. It could be so horrible that you have to move, because it's always a lot easier having a good environment than trying to fix a bad one. It's so much easier to turn something off than trying to shield it. I mean, that's one of the few, if you look at environmental toxins or pollutants, that's one of the few pluses of this electromagnetic artificial environmental soup. We only need to press a button to turn it off. You can't do that with oil spills or radioactivity or anything else. So
that's true.
And the meter I would recommend is the Cornet meter. I think it's called EDA or something like that. It's really the best meter that I found. You have a real wide range of micro and radio waves that you can measure. And it's very, very cheap for a meter. It's only like $200. And you can measure electrical and magnetic field, and it's small. You can have it in your pocket. So it's very easy. And for example, when it comes to computer, most people, they will have like a laptop. So, and just by grounding the laptop, you can lower the fields many times. Usually laptops aren't grounded at all, because you don't, the grounding pin from your outlet only goes to the transformer, the piece of black lump that's in the middle before it goes to the computer. Then you have this small cord going into the computer. Okay. So you only have plus and minus, you don't have any ground there. So you get a lot higher fields. So just by grounding the computer.
How do you ground your computer then? Like if the grounding works?
Either one can buy a grounding cable that you attach to the outlet, and then you plug it into a USB socket. Those can be found at online stores, or even if one could find a physical store that do sell stuff to shield and lower electromagnetic fields. Or if one already has something plugged into the USB or has the USB cable, then you can just either solder or wrap a cable. I mean a cable that is the metal is exposed, and then connect that to an outlet. I mean, not only to the grounding pin, nothing else, of course. And I wouldn't advise anyone to do this unless they know what they're doing or have the proper license or education of what is needed in the country of where you live.
You need to do a YouTube video on that. Like showing.
But it's very easy to do. But that should be only for entertainment purposes only.
Okay.
I mean, it's same thing that's one thing I do really want to say, because you keep saying Faraday cage, and Faraday cage is something really good, but when you have pure metal and all the sides are connected, then you're also shielding away the Earth's natural electromagnetic fields, and that isn't good. So it's better to have a fabric or a carbon paint, or you can have all the four walls and seal in it, but you shouldn't good at all. And there was these experiments done in the 70s in Germany, where they shielded young, healthy people underground from the natural electromagnetic fields. And very quickly their sleep deteriorated, their cycle, day and night cycle, all their hormonal and different systems stopped working, and the stomach and stuff. So of course, I mean, if you have no choice and you have to shield against it, because the most important thing is to have a good place to sleep. You should preferably not have any electrical stuff at all where you sleep. You shouldn't have cables under your head, the floor. You shouldn't have a Wi-Fi router or your phone there. I mean, you should preferably, if you can, you should even take out the socket. The fuse to the bedroom. But of course, if you have another room adjoined to it, or your neighbor, and they have all this stuff, it's not going to be that much use. But just not having so much stuff around you. Because at night, that's when the body's supposed to heal. So that's why it's so important, just by having a good place to sleep, where you can have low levels of microwave radiation. And a good value is like a couple of microwatts. That's the weird U with a W.
Okay, so wait, but you said that you can overshield, like you can do too much. You do need
yeah, because a true Faraday cage, that's when all the six sides have a metal connection, and it's metal, because
right. Okay.
then you're shielding against all the then no electrical field can get in at all. A magnetic field could get in. Magnetic fields are very hard to shield against. So if you would measure a strong magnetic field on your Cornet meter, or if you have another meter, then you either should turn that stuff off, or move the bed to somewhere else, because that's very expensive and hard to shield against.
Okay, so how would I know what's a good base? Like, what is too much EMFs around me, and what is like an okay amount?
Well, I mean, on that meter, for example, I mean, usually you have three different. You have three. I mean, like when you measure temperature, you have Celsius and Fahrenheit, and you have Kelvin and some others.
Okay.
So it's same thing with measuring radio waves or microwaves, and then you have something called do you measure in watts per square meter or centimeter? And you want, when it comes to, I think it's square meters, then you want it to be no more than a couple of microwatts at most. So milliwatts, that's way too much. When you do have when one has a meter, one has to use it, so you start learning what those numbers and
okay.
this diagram really means. But when you walk around and you go close to a Wi-Fi meter, you see that the strength goes way up and it's hitting the roof, and it's, oh, this is not good. Then you move away and you might go into nature and you're in the countryside, or I mean, sometimes you can even find good places in a city, because when you have a concrete building, especially when it's like this energy efficient stuff, those shields are very good against EMFs. In Stockholm, they built a couple of those high-story buildings that were environmental friendly and stuff, and
like LEEDs, LEEDs.
Well, no, I mean, it's basically that they were. I mean, they didn't need to use that much energy. I mean, they were keeping the heat in and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So they had these windows with. I mean, these. You have a very. It's called energy windows in Swedish. I have no idea what it's called in English.
Probably.
I mean, the
Energy
kind of
windows probably work. Yeah.
Yeah, energy efficient windows. I mean, like they have a very thin metal film that you can't see, so basically you don't get the radiation in. And the walls were thick, so you didn't get much radiation in. So people ended up complaining that they didn't get a signal. So they installed small cell phone towers in every person's apartment instead. And I thought, poor people.
Yeah. Exactly.
There was a guy I saw who made, he made these pillows, but they were made out of one, I forgot what they were called, but anyway, it was one layer of steel wool, and the next layer was an organic cotton, and then the next layer was steel wool. So there were a few layers like that, and that reminded me of what you were saying, that it shouldn't just all be wire or metal.
Well, I mean, the reason, I mean, yeah, but that's an orgonite blanket, orgon blanket. It works totally different. It has to do with, according to William Rice theories, the organic and metal layers of the fabric is attracting and repelling the life force, or the orgon energy that he speaks of. So it actually it accumulates and radiates life energy to the body. And I mean, when you start research and try itself, you do notice that something is going on. So, but that could also be a reason, but the reason why a true Faraday cage isn't good, because you shield out the natural fields. So then it's a lot better to live in a cage, or have a, I mean, for example, if you have a log house, because those are pretty thick, or if you have a concrete house or a brick house, I mean, that shields a lot better than just wood. And that's the thing, that's why you need a meter. You could already, I mean, one can live in a city and have very good values, or you can live and think that it's very good and it's super bad. And I mean, I made tons of mistakes, even though, I mean, learning these errors, because it's so easy to think, or have an idea of how it should be, and then it's wrong because you hadn't measured it right, or you hadn't measured at all.
Okay, cool. I'll put a link to the meter in here.
Yeah, you can actually make it time fielding, because then the microwave can bounce it. So imagine if you put it up at a wall or two walls, and because you know there's a cell phone tower or your neighbor has a Wi-Fi, but then you have a stronger signal or maybe a little bit weaker signal from the other side. So then it will bounces. It will go through you twice or maybe more times. Yeah. So that's why you need a meter. And I mean, the cheapest way to shield a room, for example, I mean, that's way cheaper than trying to make a canopy. Or I mean, the easiest way, I mean, if you want to be able to take it with you, that's making like a sleeping bag, like I did. I bought a fabric.
Fabric.
Yeah, that fabric contains silver, but since it contains like 30%, it's so much it hasn't deteriorated at all for several years. Otherwise, if one should be insured, and I mean, I'm sure you can just buy it. You have Steele as well that you can buy, and you just need. I mean, I just bought 4 meters, and that's about, I think, $150, but it's still $150 less than a grounding bed sheet. And the grounding bed sheet don't shield against EMF, and you can't sleep in it. So I just double folded it and sew it together so I can crawl down in it like a sleeping bag. So it's,
and that's shielding
quite easy. Yeah, shielding and grounding. Yeah. So I can really feel how the body gets super calm. It actually shields even better than a canopy because it's so much more thicker. The wires close to each other. But another, I mean, if you want to shield a room very easily or a wall, then you should use, when you make saunas, you have this wallpaper that has aluminum on one side and paper on the other. And you can buy a huge roll, or at least in Sweden, for like $50. Like, I don't know, 25 meters or something, maybe 1.5 meters wide. So you can make an entire room that way. It's very cheap.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That's a good option.
Hmm.
That sounds like that could overdo it, though.
Well, I mean, since you don't do the door or at least not the windows.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, when you have the windows, if you don't have an energy efficient window or put one in, then you just, I mean, if you do get too much coming into the windows, then you just have to buy a fabric that you hang. You can buy very nice curtain-like fabrics, so it's not that hard. Or if you just sleep there, you could put aluminum on the inside of a you know, these what do you call these curtains that you can pull down?
Like blinds.
Yeah. No, not blinds. The one that are
Shades.
fabric.
Or shades. Yeah. Like a blackout curtain or
Yeah. Shades.
shades. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
I mean, one thing that I did when I had a, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, nothing.
Well, one thing you did was like I'll say mine afterwards.
Okay. Well, I mean, because I mean, I had to invent a lot of things because you can't afford all the good stuff. And I mean, I had a laptop in the beginning that the screen broke, but I could still use it. So I put it, I mean, that's one thing too to do if you have a laptop and you do feel that it's not good for you. Then you buy a monitor. Then you buy a monitor that emits, that is low blue light and no flickering. Because the flickering in itself causes problems. And I mean, that is such a, I mean, they had to acknowledge that, but so I mean, basically half of all the screens you can buy for computers are non-flickering today. And if you're unsure, you can just take out your camera and look, does the screen flicker when you're looking through the camera when you made a film?
That's cool.
Yeah. But sadly, there are some screens that are non-flickering when you have 100% intensity of brightness, but then it can start flicker when you lower it. But I know that BenQs are very good screens and very cheap as well.
Okay, cool.
So then you have an external screen connected to the laptop or the computer, and then you put the laptop as far away as you can, and you put it in a metal case. But you have to see to it that you have room for, or a paper box, and you put aluminum in it. You just have to see to it that you have ventilation holes. And then you have an extension cable, so you have USB, and so then have a USB mouse and keyboard. Because otherwise you're going to work right above the surface of both where the Wi-Fi might be emitted from, Bluetooth, and also where you have all the strongest electromagnetic fields, because laptops are very, very badly shielded at all, if they have any shielding at all. So a normal computer, metal, where you don't have a big window on the side, it's a lot better.
Yeah, well, I guess in that case, you might as well have a desktop then instead of a laptop with you.
Well, I mean, if you already have a laptop,
right? Okay, yeah.
Or if you need to be able to take it with you and stuff like that. I mean everything to. I mean, you have to think in grayscales. I mean, it's better to have it like that at your desk, and where at your work you sit by it working, and then not at all, for example.
Yeah, true.
But if you do have to use Wi-Fi for your laptop, of course you can't put it in a shielded box.
True.
So you should have a Ethernet cable.
Well, and even you were showing me like there was that mat, like a grounding mat that you could put in between you and the laptop, like if you're traveling or whatever.
Like an earthing mat?
Yeah, like an earthing mat.
Yeah, they also sell clothing now.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, one can buy or make their own clothing that's supposed to shield, but I mean, that's mainly against microwaves and radio waves. It's the magnetic fields and the electric fields you can shield a little bit against. So it's more the stuff in the air, and that's the stuff that affects us the most, because I mean the most health effects that's been negatively for people. If you look at all the, I mean, if you look at what's happened since the like 70s, or you can look earlier as well, because you have this guy called Arthur Firstenberg, that is a doctor, one of the most famous one in the US that's most knowledgeable about the danger of EMF. So he wrote this book called The Invisible Rainbow, where he talks about how basically ever since we started using and producing batteries up until this day, we start having health problem. He shows, and I mean I read it in other places as well, he shows that the villages and towns that got electricity first in the end of the 19th century, they start getting health problems. Yeah, that's the book. Here's another copy.
There you go.
And I mean, and that got more rampant when we start having, I mean, phones and everything. I mean, then allergies, then burnouts, and Alzheimer's and MS and all of these stuff start going way up, and diabetes too. So most people don't really understand how much it affects us.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't even really, I mean, I'm just now starting to get the tip of the iceberg of like how I think that this stuff can actually affect us. But for the longest time, I was just like, oh, whatever, like, whatever. Like, like, oh, that's one more thing I can't worry about. Like, that's sort of like how I would think about it. Like, it would just be like, oh, now I have to worry about the Wi-Fi. I already have to worry about everything else. Like, I'm not worrying about that.
What are my neighbors going to think?
Well, not even that. I just am just kind of like it gets to like our
because
society.
Then you have to change your lifestyle. And that
yeah, you have to change. I mean, but then and our society is just like everything is bad for you. Everything, I feel like at some point.
No, there's tons of good stuff as well. It's just that isn't promoted. So you have to look it up yourself.
It's not promoted. Yeah, you do. You have to seek out the good. The bad's easy. You have to seek out the good.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time people don't do that until they get sick and start getting problems.
I guess that's true with anything.
So, yeah, it's the same for me. So, I've learned tons from my problems.
Which is good because you can help other people, so that's awesome. So yeah,
thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that stuff. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's very knowledgeable. Do you blog about this, or do you share it with the public in any other way?
No, I haven't done that, but I'm thinking very strongly of doing it. Nikki has been encouraging me. So yeah, I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel, or maybe on some other place, because it feels easiest that way, and maybe building up from there.
Yeah, you so
I mean, you feel like Yeah,
and I mean, I'll have you on here like anytime you want to come on, you can come on. But like, you definitely need to like show people details about all these things, because it's a lot of information, and it's information that people really do need, and I think it could help people. And then like, I mean, I know you have a lot more other things about like the electric universe, and about, like, I just watched that thing today from the Dr. Thomas
about the heart.
Yeah, about the heart. That, like, I mean, all that stuff is really underexposed, I guess you would say, and it would be really nice to share your research with people, because it's really cool stuff.
Yeah, Yeah, but I'm totally going to be labeled as a cracker, but I mean, that should be a sign of pride. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
At this point.
Like at this point, it's like, I mean, like, do you want to be normal? Like normal's like,
yeah, but on the other side, like, but yeah, they called me a conspiracy nut, but yeah, who cares? Everyone gets that. So.
Right.
yeah, at this point, that's even losing its power. So it's like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it needs to get out there. And plus more and more people are going to, unfortunately, be getting sick. And they're going to be looking for answers. So it would be helpful for you to have that information out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the response that I have seen around 5G, I mean, how people start realizing that it's not good. I have never seen that before with the previous technologies. When 3G was going to be rolled out in Sweden, there were more protests, probably in other countries as well, I don't know. But because people have got problems with GSM. So you had to have like this huge PR stuff from the government and the companies. So you had to invent star values for the phones and stuff like that. You had all these like gel dolls that showed you that it didn't heat the body more than 0.01 degree and stuff like that. So then everyone was calm. And nothing happened at all with 4G as I can recall at all. No protest or anything that I can even remember.
Yeah.
But I mean, basically every person that is into health or spirituality or is any kind of alternative person online are talking about 5G. That is not good. Basically everyone. I mean, up until now it's COVID.